Forward Operating Base Atlas sat in the heart of Helmand Province like a fortress against the dawn. The Hindu Kush mountains painted black silhouettes against the bleeding orange sky. August 14th, 2011. The air already carried the promise of another 100-degree day. Master Sergeant Jackson Reeves had seen 30 years of sunrises in places most Americans couldn't find on a map. At 55, his face was a roadmap of those years. Lines carved deep around eyes that had witnessed too much. Gray streaked through hair that had once been coal black. 3 Purple Hearts, 2 Bronze Stars, and a reputation among Navy SEALs as the man who could turn farm boys into precision instruments of war. He moved through the pre-dawn darkness with the economy of movement that came from decades of muscle memory. His morning ritual never changed. Walk the perimeter, check the wire, visit the armory, feel the pulse of the base before the chaos of another combat day began. The armory building was supposed to be empty at 0445 hours. Supposed to be. But Jackson heard it before he saw it. The distinctive metallic click of a Barrett M82 50 caliber rifle being field stripped. He'd heard that sound 10,000 times in his career. He knew every component, every spring, every pin. He rounded the corner expecting to see one of his SEAL snipers putting in extra maintenance time. What he saw instead made him stop mid-stride. A woman sat at the maintenance bench. Correction, a girl. Couldn't have been more than 5'3", maybe 125 pounds soaking wet. Dark brown hair pulled back in a regulation bun so tight it looked painful. Desert camouflage uniform with the sleeves rolled precisely to mid-forearm, revealing tanned, corded muscle. But it was her hands that captured Jackson's attention. They moved across the disassembled Barrett with the confidence of a concert pianist playing a familiar piece. No hesitation, no wasted motion. Each component came apart in a sequence so practiced it looked choreographed. The upper receiver, the bolt carrier group, the gas piston, the trigger assembly, laid out on an oil-stained towel in perfect geometric arrangement. Jackson had trained Marine Scout snipers, Army Rangers, Delta Force operators. Hell, he'd personally certified 43 SEAL snipers over his career. He recognized mastery when he saw it. This wasn't basic Army weapons maintenance. This was the movement pattern of someone who'd done this under stress, under fire, in the dark, while people were dying around them. The woman sensed his presence. Her hands didn't falter on the rifle's components, but her head turned. Green eyes met his, clear, calm, the kind of steady gaze that came from hours spent behind a rifle scope, controlling your breathing while the world exploded around you. She didn't seem startled, didn't straighten to attention, just gave a single, economical nod of acknowledgement and returned to her work. Jackson stepped closer. The name tape on her uniform read, Morrison, Staff Sergeant rank. He mentally scrolled to the base roster. Morrison, Sarah, age 27, designated marksman attached to 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines. On paper, she was supposed to be providing long-range fire support for infantry patrols. Nothing special. Nothing that would explain those hands. Mind if I watch? Jackson kept his voice neutral, command without arrogance. Free country, Master Sergeant. Texas accent, slight, almost hidden under careful enunciation. Jackson pulled up a stool. The Barrett was spread before her like a medical examination. 30 pounds of American engineering capable of punching through engine blocks at 1.5 miles. In the right hands, it could change the outcome of a battle. In the wrong hands, it was just an expensive paperweight. She began reassembling. The bolt carrier group slid into place with a whisper of metal on metal. Perfect tolerances, zero friction. She'd cleaned this weapon so many times, she could calculate the exact amount of oil needed by touch alone. How long you been working with the Barrett? Jackson asked. 4 years. Her fingers installed the gas piston without looking. Started on the M24 system in basic sniper school. Moved up to the M 2010. Got certified on this beauty about 6 months before deployment. 4 years. That tracked with her age. Probably joined at 23, volunteered for sniper training, graduated, deployed. But something didn't add up. Jackson had read hundreds of sniper school graduation reports. The language was always the same: qualified, proficient, demonstrates aptitude. The kind of bureaucratic nonsense that told you nothing about whether the shooter could actually perform when bullets started flying. But this was different. See much action with it? He pressed, gentle, like coaxing a spooked horse. Sarah's hands stilled on the rifle's receiver, just for a heartbeat, then continued their mechanical dance. Some, quiet, almost too quiet, enough to know what it can do when it needs to. There it was, that tone. Jackson had heard it before from his best operators, the ones who'd actually seen the elephant, actually pulled triggers on living, breathing human beings at distances most people couldn't comprehend. They never bragged, never boasted, just that quiet acknowledgement that they'd crossed a line most humans never approached. The talkers were always the ones with the least to talk about. Sarah continued working, installing the muzzle brake, checking the scope mounts with fingertip pressure, feeling for the microscopic movement that would mean a loose mounting screw. At these ranges, a loose scope could mean the difference between a successful mission and catastrophic failure. She knew that. He could see it in the way she double-checked every connection point. The maintenance bay door swung open, heavy boots on concrete. Corporal Tyler Brennan strutted in like he owned the place, 22 years old, fresh-faced kid from Tulsa with exactly 7 months in country. He'd seen some action, enough to develop the swagger that young soldiers wore like armor against their own fear. "Morning, Morrison." Tyler's grin didn't quite reach his eyes. "Still playing with that big gun of yours?" Sarah didn't respond immediately. Her focus remained on installing the Barrett's barrel assembly. Jackson watched her jaw tighten. Microscopic. Most people wouldn't have noticed, but he'd spent 3 decades reading human tells. That tiny muscle flex said everything. "Gotta keep it clean," Sarah said. Voice flat, neutral, professional. "Never know when you might need to reach out and touch someone." Tyler laughed, sharp, edged with something that wasn't quite humor. "Yeah, well, maybe next time leave the long-range work to the boys. We've got actual experience with this stuff." The maintenance bay went silent. Not the comfortable silence of people working, the heavy silence before violence. Jackson felt his own muscles tense. He'd seen this scenario play out 100 times. Casual dismissal wrapped in buddy-buddy language. The kind of thing that destroyed unit cohesion. The kind of thing that got people killed. He was about to intervene when Sarah looked up from her work. "Experience." She repeated the word slowly, like she was tasting it, testing its weight. "That's an interesting perspective, Corporal." Something in her tone made Tyler take a half-step backward. His smile faltered. Uncertain ground now. Sarah returned to her rifle, but Jackson caught the slight smile that played at the corner of her mouth. The expression of someone who knew something that others didn't. The expression of someone who'd proven themselves 1,000 times and didn't need to prove it again. Tyler shifted his weight, uncomfortable. "Yeah, well, just saying, don't want you getting in over your head." Noted. Sarah's hands never stopped moving. Click, click, click. The Barrett coming together like a puzzle only she could solve. Tyler looked at Jackson, looking for backup, looking for male solidarity. Jackson's face remained stone. "Corporal Brennan." Jackson's voice carried the weight of 3 decades of command. "How many confirmed kills do you have?" Tyler straightened, pride in his voice. "7, Master Sergeant. 3 firefights in Sangin District, all verified by my platoon leader. Good kills. Combat's combat." Jackson nodded, then turned to Sarah. "Staff Sergeant Morrison, how many confirmed kills?" Sarah's hands stilled. She looked up, met Jackson's eyes. Something flickered there. Reluctance, pain, the weight of memory. "I don't discuss numbers, Master Sergeant." Quiet, firm. Tyler's grin returned. "See? Probably hasn't. She's got more confirmed kills than your entire platoon combined. Jackson cut him off, voice like a blade. Now get out of my maintenance bay. Tyler's face went red. Mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. No words came. He looked at Sarah. She'd returned to her work, ignoring him completely. The ultimate dismissal. Tyler left, door slamming behind him. Jackson waited until the sound of boots faded. Why didn't you shut him down yourself? Sarah installed the final component. The Barrett was whole again. 30 pounds of precision death. She ran her hand along the barrel, checking for imperfections by touch alone. Proving myself to people like him wastes energy I need for the work. She lifted the rifle, sighted down the barrel at an imaginary target. Perfect cheek weld. Perfect eye relief. The weapon fit her like it had been custom built. Besides, he'll figure it out eventually. Or he won't. Either way, it doesn't change what I can do. Jackson felt something shift in his assessment of this woman. Smart, disciplined, confident without arrogance. The kind of operator you wanted at your back when everything went sideways. You do have a record, though, don't you? Not a question, a statement. Sarah set the Barrett down, gentle, reverent. Sir, some things are classified for good reason. Before Jackson could respond, the base-wide speakers crackled to life. The watch officer's voice, urgent, clipped. All personnel, this is Atlas Tactical Operations Center. We have troops in contact. Eagle 6 convoy, Sangin Valley, coordinates to follow. Multiple casualties, requesting immediate fire support. Sniper teams to TOC immediately. This is not a drill. Sarah was already moving, strapping on her plate carrier, grabbing pre-staged ammunition, slinging the Barrett across her back with practiced ease. 68 pounds of equipment on a 125-pound frame. She moved like it weighed nothing. Jackson followed her to the Tactical Operations Center. The TOC was organized chaos. Radio operators coordinating air support, intelligence officers pulling up satellite imagery. Colonel William Hayes stood at the central display, 60 years old and straight as a ramrod. Korea veteran, 2 tours in Desert Storm. The kind of commander who'd earned respect through competence, not rank. The tactical display showed Captain Marcus Webb's convoy, 12 vehicles strung out along a narrow valley road. Red icons marked enemy positions. Too many red icons. Taking effective fire from ridge positions. 3 Kilo, India, Alpha. 5 Whiskey, India, Alpha. The radio transmission crackled with static and the distinctive crack of incoming rounds. Request immediate sniper support. Enemy positions approximately 900 to 1,400 meters. Elevated terrain. We are pinned down. Hayes looked up as Jackson and Sarah entered. His eyes went to Sarah, skeptical. She was already studying the tactical display. Morrison, you're rated on the Barrett system? Hayes asked. Yes, sir. Sarah traced the enemy positions with her finger. Based on the terrain and their firing positions, they're using the rock formations for cover. Standard small arms won't reach them effectively. The angle gives them protection from direct fire weapons. Hayes' eyebrows rose. That wasn't the response of a typical designated marksman. That was tactical analysis, battlefield geometry, the kind of thing you learned from hard experience. We need a sniper team on that ridge in 20 minutes, Hayes said. The Apache birds are 15 minutes out, but Webb can't wait that long. I can be there in 15, sir, Sarah's voice, calm, no hesitation. Morrison, those are extreme range shots in combat conditions, Hayes began. Jackson stepped forward. Sir, let Ghost work. The nickname hung in the air, Ghost. Sarah glanced at Jackson. Something unspoken passed between them. Hayes studied Sarah for a long moment, reading her, measuring her. 30 years of combat experience told him something that rank and gender couldn't. This woman was the real deal. Go. One word, command and trust combined. Sarah moved, fast, efficient, no wasted energy. Jackson fell in beside her. Ghost? Sarah asked as they jogged toward the motor pool. Call it a hunch. Jackson grabbed his spotting scope and range-finding equipment. You move like a ghost. You shoot like a ghost. Might as well own it. They loaded into a Humvee, driver already waiting, engine running. The ride to the ridge position took 12 minutes. Brutal terrain. The vehicle bounced over rocks in dried creek beds. Sarah braced the Barrett carefully, protecting it like a child. The rifle was more than equipment. It was an extension of herself. The Humvee screeched to a halt. Sarah was out before the wheel stopped moving. She moved up the rocky slope like a mountain goat. 68 pounds of gear. 103-degree heat. She didn't slow down. Jackson followed. His 55-year-old lungs burned. Pride kept him moving. He'd trained too many young shooters to let one outpace him now. They reached the ridge crest. Sarah was already setting up. Bipod deployed. Rear bag positioned. Body alignment perfect. She pulled out a small meteorological device, checking wind speed, temperature, humidity, barometric pressure, every variable that would affect a bullet's flight path. Jackson set up his spotting scope, 60-power magnification. He could see the convoy below, vehicles clustered in a natural choke point, bodies on the ground, Marines taking cover behind Humvees, muzzle flashes from the ridge opposite them. Range to nearest target, Jackson called out. He triggered his laser rangefinder. 927 meters. Sarah adjusted her scope. I have visual on a PKM gunner, partially concealed behind sandbag position. 6-inch gap at chest height. Wind? 4 to 6 miles per hour. Southwest. Steady. Sarah's breathing steadied into the controlled rhythm her father had drilled into her. Calm. Focused. Ready. Jackson watched through his spotting scope. The PKM gunner was hammering the convoy with sustained fire. 7.62 millimeter rounds chewing through metal and flesh. Every second he stayed alive, more Marines died. Target confirmed hostile, Jackson said. You're clear to engage. Sarah's finger rested on the trigger. Proper placement. First pad of the index finger. Not too much, not too little. Perfect pressure distribution. She whispered something. Jackson couldn't hear it. Didn't need to. He'd heard enough prayers before shots. Enough last words. Enough quiet promises to the dead. The Barrett spoke. At 927 meters, the bullet took roughly 1.3 seconds to reach the target. Jackson watched through his spotting scope. The PKM gunner's head snapped back. The 6-inch gap in the sandbags. Perfect shot placement. The man dropped like someone had cut his strings. Target down, Jackson confirmed. Sarah was already cycling the bolt, ejecting the spent brass, chambering a fresh round. Her eyes never left the scope. Second target, 1,185 meters. Spotter moving behind pickup truck. Confirmed, Jackson said. He's moving left to right, approximately 2 miles per hour. Sarah led the target, calculating bullet flight time, predicting where the target would be when the round arrived. Advanced ballistics performed in her head faster than most people could use a calculator. The rifle cracked again. Through the spotting scope, Jackson saw the truck's cab window explode. The spotter collapsed. The shot had traveled through the glass, through the cab, and found flesh on the other side. Jesus, Jackson breathed. That's a hell of a shot. Sarah didn't respond, already scanning for the next threat. Third target, 1,340 meters, motorcycle, Taliban commander based on the radio antenna. Jackson found the target, a man on a motorcycle, moving fast, maybe 35 miles per hour across rough terrain, weaving between rocks. This wasn't just a long shot, this was a nearly impossible shot. Target's moving too fast, Jackson said. Wait for him to stop. No time. Sarah's voice, flat, certain. He's calling in reinforcements. I can see the radio. He stops, we lose our chance. Jackson watched her. She was calculating. Distance, target speed, lead time, bullet drop, wind drift, solving a physics problem that would take a computer several seconds. She had maybe 3 seconds before the motorcycle disappeared behind a boulder. Sarah exhaled, halfway, held it, the natural respiratory pause. She sent the round downrange. The motorcycle was 120 feet from where it had been when she pulled the trigger. The round caught the rider in the upper torso. The bike went down in a spectacular crash. Tumbling, throwing up dust. The rider didn't get up. "Confirmed kill," Jackson said. His voice carried a note of awe he couldn't quite hide. "Sarah, that was a moving target at over 1,300 meters. That's Chris Kyle level shooting." Sarah's face remained expressionless, scanning, hunting. Fourth target, 1,287 meters. Behind boulder, can't get a direct shot. Jackson found the position. A Taliban fighter crouched behind a rock formation. Smart, using natural cover, no clean shot. The only exposed area was a few inches of shoulder, not enough to guarantee a kill. "No shot," Jackson said. "Wait for him to move." Sarah studied the rock face, the angle, the composition, her mind working through something Jackson couldn't see. "I have a shot," she said. Before Jackson could ask what she meant, the Barrett fired. Through his spotting scope, Jackson saw the round impact. Not on the target, on the rock face, 6 inches to the left of the fighter's position. The .50 caliber round hit granite at supersonic speed. The rock exploded. Fragments, shrapnel, pieces of bullet jacket and stone moving at lethal velocity. The Taliban fighter screamed, visible even at this distance. He stumbled out from cover, clutching his face, his neck, shredded by stone fragments. Sarah broke the shot again, center mass. The fighter dropped. Jackson sat back, stunned. "You just calculated a ricochet shot at 1,200 meters, under combat stress." "The angle was right," Sarah ejected the brass. "Granite's hard enough to fragment the bullet, but not absorb all the energy. Basic physics." Basic physics. Jackson had trained scout snipers for 20 years. He'd never seen anyone attempt a ricochet shot beyond 300 meters. The variables were too complex, the margin for error too small. This woman just did it at 4 times that range, and she called it basic physics. The radio crackled. Captain Webb's voice, strained but alive. "Atlas, Eagle 6, all threats neutralized. I don't know what kind of guardian angel you sent, but she just saved 14 lives. Request immediate medical evacuation for wounded." Hayes's voice came over Sarah's radio. "Ghost, status." Sarah keyed the mic. 4 targets engaged. 4 targets eliminated. Area secure for medevac operations. "Outstanding work. Return to base for debrief." The ride back was silent. Sarah cleaned the Barrett in the moving Humvee. Methodical. Practiced. Jackson watched her hands. Steady. No tremor. No shake. She just killed 4 human beings at extreme range, and her hands were rock solid. That told him 2 things. First, she'd done this before. Many times. Second, she'd made peace with it. Whatever psychological process soldiers went through to reconcile taking human life, Sarah had completed that journey. The debriefing room felt sterile after the heat and chaos of the ridge. Colonel Hayes sat at the head of the table, intelligence officers on either side, Jackson and Sarah across from them. Staff Sergeant Morrison. Hayes opened a personnel file, Sarah's file. "According to your records, you're qualified expert on the M24 sniper system. Completed Army sniper school at Fort Benning with honors. Deployed to Afghanistan 7 months ago as a designated marksman. Nothing in here about Barrett qualification. Nothing about the kind of tactical analysis you demonstrated in the TOC. And certainly nothing about ricochet shots at extreme range." Sarah sat at attention, eyes forward. "Sir, my file reflects my official training history." "Official." Hayes latched onto the word. "Meaning there's unofficial history." Silence. Sarah's face remained neutral. Jackson leaned forward. Sir, with respect, I've trained Navy SEAL snipers for 20 years. What Staff Sergeant Morrison demonstrated today wasn't Army Sniper School technique. That was JSOC level work. Tier 1 operations. The kind of shooting you don't learn at Benning. Hayes studied Sarah, reading between the lines of her service record, looking for the gaps, the unexplained periods, the sanitized sections. Staff Sergeant Morrison. Hayes closed the file. Did you have a prior assignment that's not reflected in your standard personnel record? Sarah's jaw tightened. Minute movement. Sir, I had a temporary duty assignment. Task Force Paladin, 18 months, classified under Special Access Programs. The room went very quiet. Task Force Paladin. Jackson knew the name, barely, whispered about in SEAL team rooms. ACIA, Hunter-Killer Unit. They didn't conduct raids. They didn't capture high-value targets. They eliminated specific threats with surgical precision. And they did it from distances that made conventional forces nervous. Paladin. Hayes's voice carried new respect. Counter-sniper operations? Yes, sir. Sarah's voice steady. Professional. Taliban and Al-Qaeda had been targeting U.S. officers with trained marksmen, disrupting command and control. Paladin's mission was to identify and neutralize those snipers before they could operate. How many? Jackson asked. He needed to know. Needed to understand exactly what kind of operator sat across from him. Sarah met his eyes. 47 confirmed kills, Master Sergeant, all at ranges exceeding 800 meters, 32 of them beyond 1,500 meters. 47. Jackson felt the number settle in his gut like a stone. Most career snipers would be proud of 20 confirmed kills over a full 20-year career. Sarah had 47 in 18 months. Hayes leaned back. What's your longest confirmed kill, Staff Sergeant? Sarah was quiet for a moment, remembering, or maybe deciding whether to say it out loud. Make it real. 3,247 meters, sir. Her voice barely above a whisper. March 23rd, 2010. 3 observers with laser rangefinders verified the distance. 2 from my unit, 1 from CIA ground branch who was conducting surveillance on the target. The room fell silent. 3,247 meters, just over 2 miles. Jackson did the math in his head. That put her within 300 meters of the longest confirmed sniper kill in history. A Canadian Special Forces operator had made a 3,500-meter shot in Iraq. Nobody else had come close. Until now. Who was the target? Hayes asked, gentle, like he already knew this was going to hurt. Sarah's hands clenched, first sign of emotion she'd shown. Taliban sniper, call sign the surgeon, real name unknown. He'd killed 23 Americans over 14 months, all long-range precision shots, all targeting officers and senior NCOs. He was degrading our command effectiveness across 3 provinces. She paused, breathing carefully, controlling something that wanted to break free. The surgeon killed my father, Gunnery Sergeant Thomas Morrison, February 7th, 2009. Shot him through an armored Humvee viewport at 2,960 meters. My father bled out before medevac arrived. Jackson felt the pieces click into place. Sarah Morrison hadn't joined the Army for patriotic duty or career advancement. She joined for revenge. Spent 18 months hunting the man who killed her father. And when she found him, she'd reached out across 2 miles of empty air and delivered justice. I'm sorry for your loss, Hayes said. Your father was a good Marine. You knew him, sir? Sarah looked up, surprised. Tom Morrison trained half the scout snipers in the Corps during the 90s, including me. He was the best instructor I ever had. Taught me that shooting was only half the job. The other half was knowing when not to shoot, when to hold fire and let the target live because the tactical situation demanded it. Sarah's eyes glistened. First tears Jackson had seen. She blinked them away. Professional. Controlled. If your father trained you, Hayes continued, then I understand why you're this good. But I need to know something. Why isn't any of this in your official record? Why was your time with Task Force Paladin classified? Sarah looked down at her hands. Sir, after I eliminated the surgeon, I was discharged from Task Force Paladin. The shot was successful. The distance was verified. The target was confirmed dead. But I disobeyed direct orders to take it. What were your orders? Jackson asked. Capture. CIA wanted the surgeon alive for interrogation. They believed he had intelligence on Russian training programs for insurgent forces. I was ordered to wound, not kill, to incapacitate so ground forces could capture him. Sarah's voice was steady, but Jackson heard the undercurrent. The pain, the guilt. I took the kill shot anyway, 3,247 meters, through his center mass. He died instantly. So they kicked you out, Hayes said. Psychological evaluation determined I was operationally compromised, revenge motivated, unable to follow orders when personal feelings were involved. They sanitized my record and reassigned me to conventional forces. As punishment and as protection. If enemy intelligence identified me as a Paladin operator, I'd be a high-value target. This way, I'm just another designated marksman in a regular infantry unit. Jackson understood now. Sarah Morrison was one of the most lethal snipers in American military history, and she'd been deliberately buried in the bureaucracy, hidden away, her capabilities classified, her record scrubbed, all because she chose justice over orders. Hayes stood, walked to the window overlooking the base. Staff Sergeant Morrison, I'm going to ask you a question, and I need an honest answer. Can you follow orders now? Can you put mission before personal feelings? Sarah stood. Attention. Sir, I've had 2 years to think about that shot. 2 years to live with the consequences. My father taught me that vengeance and justice aren't the same thing. Vengeance is personal. Justice is professional. I took that shot for vengeance. I've regretted it every day since. Not because the surgeon didn't deserve to die, but because I let my emotions compromise the mission. I won't make that mistake again. Hayes turned, studied her. Master Sergeant Reeves, your assessment? Jackson had spent 30 years evaluating warriors, reading their potential, predicting their performance under pressure. He'd made his reputation on being right about people. Sir, Staff Sergeant Morrison is the most naturally gifted sniper I've encountered in 3 decades of service. Her technical skills are beyond question. Her tactical awareness is exceptional. And I believe she's learned the hardest lesson any operator can learn, that the mission is bigger than personal feelings. I'd trust her at my back. Hayes nodded slowly. Morrison, my SEAL team will be conducting operations in this region for the next several weeks. Some of those operations will require sniper support at extreme ranges. Would you be interested in providing that support on a temporary assignment basis? Sarah looked surprised. Sir, I'm not sure my chain of command would approve cross-service assignments. I'm your chain of command in this area of operations, Hayes said, and I just approved it. You saved 14 Marines today. If you can provide that level of support for our special operations missions, it would be a significant force multiplier. What do you say? Sarah's face showed the war happening inside. Going back to high-intensity operations meant returning to the world she'd left, the world of impossible shots in classified missions, the world that had broken her. But it also meant using her skills at their full potential, meant honoring her father's legacy by protecting other fathers, other sons, other daughters. Sir, Sarah said quietly, what kind of ranges are we talking about? Jackson smiled. The kind that would challenge even someone with your background, Staff Sergeant. The kind that require a shooter who can make impossible shots look routine. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, then nodded. I'd be honored to support your operations, sir. As they left the debriefing room, Jackson fell in step beside Sarah. The sun was setting now, painting the Afghan sky in shades of purple and gold. beautiful and terrible at the same time, like everything in this place. Ghost, Jackson said. That nickname, it fits for another reason. What's that, Master Sergeant? Because you're invisible. The enemy never sees you, never hears you, just feels the impact when you reach out across impossible distances. You're a ghost in their scopes, a phantom in their nightmares. Sarah smiled, small, sad. My father used to say the best snipers were the ones nobody remembered, the ones who did the job and disappeared. No glory, no recognition, just the work. Tom was right, but he'd also be proud as hell of you. You know that, right? Sarah looked at the mountains, at the endless hostile terrain that had swallowed so many American lives. I hope so. I really hope so. They walked in silence. Two warriors bound by respect and the weight of the work they did. The sun dipped below the mountains. Darkness fell like a curtain. Somewhere out there, in those mountains, other threats waited. Other snipers. Other enemies who killed from distance and disappeared like smoke. But now, Forward Operating Base Atlas had its own ghost, and she was ready to reach out across impossible distances and deliver American justice with surgical precision. The Barrett M82 waited in the armory, clean, perfect, ready. Sarah Morrison was ready too. The real war was about to begin. 48 hours after Sarah Morrison saved 14 Marines with 4 impossible shots, the intelligence briefing room at Forward Operating Base Atlas felt like a tomb. The air conditioning struggled against the August heat. Maps covered every wall. Satellite imagery glowed on computer screens, and Colonel William Hayes stood at the head of the conference table with the expression of a man about to ask the impossible. Sarah sat beside Jackson Reeves. Across from them, 3 intelligence officers studied folders marked with red classification stamps. The kind of folders that didn't leave the room. The kind that detailed operations nobody would ever read about in newspapers. Hayes pulled up a photograph on the main display. A man, 40s, hard face carved from years of violence, pale eyes that looked dead even in the photograph, scar tissue running along his jawline. The image quality suggested it had been taken from a drone, long range. The subject unaware. This is our target. Hayes's voice carried the weight of command. We don't have a real name, multiple aliases, but intelligence designates him as Ramzan Volkov. Call sign, the Chechen. Sarah felt something cold settle in her stomach. She'd heard whispers about the Chechen, stories told in hushed voices at sniper schools. A ghost story meant to keep cocky young shooters humble. Except he wasn't a ghost story. Hayes clicked through images. Bodies. American bodies. Officers. Senior NCOs. Each killed by a single long-range shot. Volkov is former Soviet Spetsnaz, fought in Afghanistan during the Soviet occupation in the 80s, left when the USSR collapsed, dropped off intelligence radar for 15 years, resurfaced in 2008, working with Taliban forces in Helmand province. Another click. More bodies, more precise kills. In the last 18 months, Volkov has 63 confirmed kills of American personnel, all long-range precision shots, all targeting leadership. He's not just eliminating soldiers, he's decapitating our command structure, making us afraid to put experienced personnel in the field. Jackson leaned forward. Operating range? 2,500 to 3,500 meters. He's taken shots that most snipers wouldn't attempt, and his success rate is approximately 80%. Hayes let that number sink in. He's also been training Taliban snipers. We've identified 12 fighters who received instruction from him. Collectively, they've killed over 140 coalition forces. Sarah studied the target photograph. Volkov's eyes. Something familiar in them. The emptiness, the calculation. She'd seen that look before. In the surgeon, in other men who'd crossed the line from soldier to something else, something that enjoyed the killing. What's his current location? Sarah asked. Hayes zoomed the satellite image. A compound in the Kajaki district, Isolated, elevated terrain, natural defensive positions. This compound, he uses it as a base of operations, ventures out for hits, returns here. We've had eyes on it for 3 weeks. Very consistent pattern. Every day at noon, he does a security walk around the perimeter, checks the wire, inspects guard positions. Military discipline from his Spetsnaz days. How long is he exposed? Jackson's tactical mind already working the problem. 90 seconds, maybe less if weather conditions change his routine. Sarah felt everyone's eyes on her. She knew where this was going, knew what they were about to ask. The only position that offers clear line of sight to the compound is here. Hayes pointed to a ridge system northwest of the target. Range from that position to the compound courtyard is 3,890 meters. 3,890 meters. Sarah did the math automatically. 2.4 miles. 643 meters farther than her record shot against the surgeon. At that range, bullet drop would exceed 240 feet. Flight time over 6 seconds. Any wind would push the round dozens of feet off course. It was beyond the Barrett's effective range, beyond what military doctrine considered possible. "Sir," Sarah said carefully, "that's an extremely long shot, even in perfect conditions." "We know," Hayes cut her off. "Not unkind, just honest. We've run the ballistics. We've consulted with every long-range shooting expert in theater. They all say the same thing. It's theoretically possible, but practically impossible. Too many variables, too much distance, too little margin for error." He looked at Sarah directly. "But you've made a shot at 3,247 meters. You've demonstrated capabilities beyond what conventional training produces. If anyone in this theater can make this shot, it's you." Sarah felt the weight of it, the expectation, the pressure. "What's the time frame?" 72 hours. Intelligence indicates Volkov is planning a major attack. Kandahar airfield. We've intercepted communications about a coordinated assault. Truck bombs, rockets, small arms. If he succeeds, casualty estimates range from 200 to 300 personnel. 200 to 300 lives. Fathers, sons, brothers. The number hit Sarah like a physical blow. She thought about her own father, Gunnery Sergeant Tom Morrison, killed by a sniper's bullet because he'd been in the wrong place at the wrong time. How many other families would receive those notifications if she didn't take this shot? But there was something else. Hayes hadn't mentioned it yet, but Sarah could feel it coming. "Sir, what are the rules of engagement?" She kept her voice neutral, professional. Hayes exchanged glances with the intelligence officers. "That's complicated. The CIA has an interest in this target. They believe Volkov has intelligence about Russian training operations. Their preference would be capture, not kill." There it was. Sarah felt Jackson stiffen beside her. "You want me to wound him?" Sarah's voice flat. "At 3,890 meters, in combat conditions. You want me to incapacitate without killing?" "That's the CIA's preference," Hayes said. "But I'm giving you tactical discretion. Your primary mission is to prevent the Kandahar attack. If you can achieve that through wounding and capture, excellent. If the tactical situation requires lethal force, you're authorized. I'm not going to sacrifice American lives for an intelligence opportunity." Sarah appreciated the honesty. Hayes was giving her room to operate, trusting her judgment. But the CIA angle worried her. She'd been burned by agency priorities before. "I'll need time to prepare," Sarah said. "Practice shots at extended range. Atmospheric data collection. Wind pattern analysis. You've got 48 hours before insertion." Hayes stood. "Use them well. This isn't just about one shot, Staff Sergeant. This is about preventing a massacre. And maybe, if we're lucky, removing the most lethal enemy sniper in theater." The briefing ended. Sarah and Jackson walked across the base toward the long-range shooting facility. The sun hammered down. 108 degrees. The kind of heat that made you understand why this place had broken empires for thousands of years. "You don't have to do this," Jackson said quietly. Hayes was right. It's a theoretically impossible shot. Nobody would blame you for declining. Sarah thought about that. She could say no, could explain that the range exceeded her capabilities, that the variables were too complex, that the risk of failure was too high. Everyone would understand. Everyone would accept it, except her. "My father taught me something," Sarah said. "He said the difference between good snipers and great ones wasn't skill. It was knowing which impossible shots you could make and which you couldn't. Knowing your limits, but also knowing when to push past them. And you think you can make this shot?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Honest assessment. No ego, no bravado, just cold calculation based on physics and capability. "I think I can, but I need to practice. I need to understand what that bullet does at 3,890 meters. I need to feel it." The long-range facility sat at the far edge of the base. Berms built up to absorb rounds. Targets placed at graduated distances. The longest marked range was 3,000 meters. Sarah would need to extend beyond that. She spent the next 6 hours shooting. Jackson spotted, calling wind, confirming impacts, taking notes, building a data profile of how the Barrett performed at extreme distance. At 3,500 meters, Sarah hit 5 out of 12 shots. The misses were educational. Showed her how wind at different altitudes affected the bullet's path, how temperature changes altered trajectory, how even microscopic variations in ammunition produce different results. At 3,700 meters, she hit 3 out of 10. The margin for error was razor thin. At 3,890 meters, her first 5 shots missed completely. The 6th hit the edge of the target. The 7th missed. The 8th, 9th, and 10th missed. Sarah sat back, frustrated. The distance was pushing her to the absolute limit, maybe past it. "Take a break," Jackson said. "You're forcing it." They sat in the shade, drinking water, letting her body recover. Her shoulder ached from the Barrett's recoil. Her eyes burned from hours behind the scope. "Tell me about your brother," Sarah said. "You mentioned he died in Iraq." Jackson was quiet, the subject clearly painful. But he'd opened that door during their first conversation, and Sarah needed to understand the man who would be spotting her shot, the man whose judgment she'd be trusting with her life and the lives of hundreds of others. "Mark, 2 years younger than me, wanted to be a Marine like his big brother." Jackson's voice carried the weight of old grief. "I trained him before his deployment, taught him everything I knew, room clearing, combat tactics, weapons handling, told him he was ready." He wasn't? He was, but ready doesn't mean invincible. IED in Fallujah, 2004. He was leading his fire team through a residential area. Textbook tactics, perfect execution. The bomb was planted under a dead dog in the street. Triple-stacked artillery rounds. When it went off, Jackson stopped, breathed. There wasn't enough left to fill a small coffin. Sarah understood that pain, the guilt, the second-guessing. "You blame yourself. Every day. I trained him. I told him he could handle anything Iraq threw at him. I was wrong. You gave him the best training possible, the best knowledge, the best preparation. You can't control every variable in combat. Nobody can." Jackson looked at her. "You sound like you're trying to convince yourself, not me." Sarah smiled, sad. "Maybe. I've spent 2 years wondering if I could have saved my father. If I'd been faster getting through sniper school. If I'd been assigned to his area of operations. If I'd been good enough to find the surgeon before he found my dad." She paused. "But the truth is, I couldn't control those variables. All I could control was what I did after, how I honored his memory. By hunting his killer. By finishing what he started. By becoming the sniper he trained me to be." Sarah picked up the Barrett. This shot, Volkov, it's not about revenge. It's about preventing other daughters from getting that notification, other families from living with that hole that never fills. Jackson nodded. Then let's get back to work. They resumed shooting. Sarah adjusted her approach, stopped trying to force the shot, started trusting her instincts. The training her father had drilled into her, the muscle memory from 18 months with Task Force Paladin. At 3890 meters, her 11th shot hit center mass on the target. Her 12th shot hit 6 inches higher. Her 13th shot hit center mass again. Jackson watched the pattern develop. You're getting it. What changed? I stopped thinking about the distance, started thinking about the fundamentals. Breathing, trigger control, follow through. The distance doesn't matter if the fundamentals are perfect. They continued until darkness fell. Sarah had fired 43 rounds at extreme range. 13 had hit the target. A 30% success rate at a distance most snipers would never attempt. It wasn't perfect, but it was possible. That night, Sarah lay in her bunk and thought about the mission. 72 hours until insertion. 48 hours until they moved to the forward position. 24 hours to set up and prepare. Then 90 seconds to make a shot that would determine whether hundreds of Americans lived or died. No pressure. She pulled out a photograph, creased, worn from being carried in her pocket for years. Her father, Gunnery Sergeant Tom Morrison, standing beside a Barrett M82, smiling, proud, strong. "I miss you, Dad," she whispered to the photograph. "I wish you were here to help me with this one, to tell me if I'm being crazy or brave, to remind me of something you taught me that I've forgotten." She closed her eyes and saw her father at the range, patient, methodical, teaching her to trust herself more than the equipment. Those lessons had prepared her for this moment. "I'll make you proud, Dad. I promise." The next morning she woke to chaos. Explosions rocked the base. Sarah was out of her bunk and into her gear in 30 seconds. Plate carrier, helmet, rifle, moving toward the sound of combat on pure instinct. The base was under attack. Rockets, small arms fire, coordinated assault on 3 sides. Sarah reached the TOC. Hayes was coordinating defense. Radio operators calling for air support. Medical teams preparing for casualties. "What's the situation?" Sarah asked. Hayes looked grim. "Probe attack. They're testing our defenses. This is Volkov's signature. He hits with precision strikes to identify weak points, then plans his major assault based on what he learns." "How many casualties?" 2 wounded so far. Could have been worse. They're pulling back now." As Hayes predicted, the attack ended 15 minutes after it began. The Taliban fighters melted back into the mountains, taking their intelligence with them. An hour later, in a secure conference room, Hayes reviewed attack footage with grim intensity. "They knew exactly where our ammunition storage was," the S2 intelligence officer said, tracing the rocket impacts on the display. "Not our fuel depot, not the motor pool. They went straight for the bunker that's not marked on any map." Sarah felt ice in her stomach. "Sir, that's actionable intelligence, inside intelligence." Hayes's jaw tightened. "We've had 3 precision strikes in 2 weeks, each one targeting infrastructure that requires base access to identify. Someone here is feeding them targeting data." Jackson's voice was hard. "Do we have suspects?" "Working the problem. Whoever it is has access to operational schedules, guard rotations, supply manifests." Hayes looked directly at Sarah. "Your mission is now code word classified. Nobody outside this room knows the details. Not even your own chain of command. If there's a mole, we don't give them the chance to compromise you." The weight of it settled over Sarah. Somewhere on this base, an American was betraying his brothers. Might already know about her. Might already be planning how to stop her. She'd have to succeed before whoever it was could act. But they'd left something else behind. An intelligence officer approached Hayes with a radio. Sir, we're getting reports from informants in Kajaki district. Volkov is moving up his timeline. The Kandahar attack is happening in 24 hours, not 72. Sarah felt the timeline compress. 24 hours total. They'd need to insert immediately. Set up in darkness. Wait for tomorrow's noon window. One shot. No second chances. Hayes turned to her. Can you be ready? Sarah thought about her practice session. 30% success rate. At a range that exceeded the Barrett's design parameters. In a combat environment with hostile forces nearby. With the lives of hundreds depending on perfect execution. With a possible traitor on base who might compromise her position. Yes, sir, she said. I can be ready. Jackson appeared at her elbow. We need to talk. Privately. They walked to an empty storage room. Jackson's face was serious. More serious than she'd seen since they met. I just got intelligence from my SEAL contacts, Jackson said. About Volkov. About why the CIA wants him alive. Go on. He's not just former Spetsnaz. He's former GRU. Russian military intelligence. He didn't leave when the Soviet Union collapsed. He was reassigned. Deep cover. The Russians sent him back to Afghanistan to train insurgents, to bleed American forces, to test new tactics in weapons systems. Sarah felt the pieces clicking together. The CIA wants to know what the Russians are planning. More than that, they think Volkov has intelligence about Russian operations in other theaters. Syria, Ukraine, Libya, everywhere the Russians are working through proxies. He's a treasure trove of classified information. So they really do want him alive. Jackson's expression darkened. There's more. I pulled some strings, called in favors from old contacts. Sarah, Volkov didn't just kill your father. He trained the surgeon, taught him advanced techniques, provided him with equipment. Your father was killed with a Russian-made bullet, fired from a Russian-made rifle, by a sniper trained by Russian intelligence. The room seemed to tilt. Sarah grabbed the wall for support. My father was killed by Russian intelligence? Indirectly, but yes. Volkov has been running a program to create insurgent snipers specifically to target American leadership. Your father was one of hundreds killed in that program. The surgeon was just one of Volkov's students. Sarah felt rage building, hot, consuming. The same rage that had driven her to disobey orders and kill the surgeon. The same rage that had gotten her kicked out of Task Force Paladin. Sarah, Jackson's voice cut through the red haze. I'm telling you this because you need to know, but I'm also telling you that you cannot let this become personal. If you take that shot for revenge, you'll miss. Anger makes shooters sloppy. You taught me that when you told me about your father's lessons. Sarah breathed, controlled, pushed the rage down into a locked box in her mind. I know. I understand. Do you? Because the CIA is going to pressure you to wound, not kill. They're going to remind you that his intelligence could save American lives. And they're right. His information could prevent future attacks. But Sarah, at 3,890 meters, you cannot reliably place a wounding shot. You can barely hit center mass. If you try to wound him, you'll probably miss completely. So what do I do? Jackson looked at her with decades of hard experience in his eyes. You do what your father would have done. You assess the tactical situation. You make the call based on mission requirements, not personal feelings or political pressure. And you live with the consequences. Sarah nodded. When do we leave? Wheels up in 6 hours. Helicopter insert to forward operating Point Eagle. From there, it's an 8-hour foot patrol to the ridge position. We'll be in position by 0400 hours tomorrow. Then we wait for Volkov's noon security walk. Who else is coming? Just us. This is a 2-person operation. Me spotting, you shooting. Small footprint, less chance of detection. Sarah started to leave, then stopped. Jackson, thank you for telling me about Volkov, about my father. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. Tom Morrison was my friend, and you're becoming one, too. Friends don't let friends walk into situations blind. The next 6 hours passed in mechanical preparation. Sarah checked her equipment 3 times. Barrett cleaned and function checked. Ammunition inspected round by round. Gear packed and repacked. Meteorological equipment calibrated. Range-finding equipment tested. Jackson did the same with his spotting equipment. 60-power scope, laser rangefinders, ballistic computers, communication gear, everything triple-checked. They ate a final meal in the dining facility. Neither spoke much, the weight of the mission settling over them like a physical thing. At 1600 hours, they loaded into a Black Hawk helicopter. The crew chief gave them a thumbs up. The rotors spun up. The helicopter lifted into the Afghan sky. Sarah watched the base shrink below them, wondered if she'd see it again, wondered if this mission would end like so many others, with a flag-draped coffin and another family destroyed. The helicopter flew nap of the earth, hugging terrain, avoiding radar. The pilots were night stalkers, the best in the world. They'd done this run 1,000 times. 40 minutes later, they touched down at Forward Operating Point Eagle, a small outpost manned by 2 squads of Marines. Remote, isolated. The kind of place you sent people who'd done something to piss off their command. Or the kind of place you staged from when you didn't want anyone to know you were there. The Marine lieutenant in charge met them. Young, maybe 25, but his eyes were older. Combat ages people fast. Master Sergeant, Staff Sergeant, he shook their hands. We've got your route planned. 8 hours to the ridge position. We'll have a QRF standing by in case you need emergency extract. Appreciated, Jackson said. We'll radio when we're in position. They left at 1800 hours. Sunset still 2 hours away. The patrol route took them through some of the most hostile terrain in Helmand Province. Rocky, mountainous, perfect ambush country. Sarah carried 68 pounds of gear, the Barrett across her back. Ammunition distributed in her pack and pouches. Water, food, medical supplies, everything she needed to survive and operate for 48 hours if necessary. Jackson carried 55 pounds, his age showing in the way he moved. Careful, economical, conserving energy for when it mattered. They moved in silence, tactical spacing, eyes scanning for threats. Afghanistan had a way of killing careless soldiers. Mines, ambushes, simple bad luck. You respected the terrain, or it killed you. Night fell. They continued by moonlight and night vision. The landscape turned green and ghostly. Shadows became potential threats. Every rock could hide an enemy. Every sound could be an ambush developing. 4 hours in, they stopped for water. Sarah's legs burned. Her shoulders ached. The Barrett felt like it weighed 100 pounds instead of 30. How you holding up? Jackson asked quietly. Fine. Sarah drank, conserved. They had a long way to go. Your father would be proud of you. Making this patrol, preparing for this shot. He knew the cost of this work. He'd be proud you're willing to pay it. Sarah looked at the stars, brilliant in the unpolluted Afghan sky. The same stars her father had seen. The same stars that had watched him die. I hope so, she said. I really hope so. They continued, hour after hour, climbing, moving, the ridge position getting closer. At 03:45 they reached it. Jackson set up the spotting scope. Sarah assembled the Barrett. They created a hide position using natural terrain features. Concealment, protection, clear line of sight. Sarah ranged the target area. The laser rangefinder painted the compound with invisible light. Range, 4,087 meters, Sarah said quietly. 4,087 meters, even farther than the briefing had indicated, 200 meters farther than she'd practiced. Jackson looked at her, question in his eyes. Sarah did the math. At this range, bullet drop would be 247 feet. Flight time, 6.4 seconds. Even a slight wind would push the round dozens of feet off target. It was beyond impossible. It was insane. "I can make it," Sarah said. Not bravado, not confidence, just cold assessment of capability. "I know you can," Jackson replied, "but should you?" Sarah thought about that, about Kandahar airfield, about 200 innocent people who would die if she didn't take this shot, about her father, about every American who died because of Volkov's training program. "Yes," she said, "I should. I have to." They settled in to wait. 7 hours until Volkov's security walk. 7 hours to prepare, to calculate, to quiet her mind and let her training take over. 7 hours until the shot that would make or break her career. 7 hours until she found out if Sarah Morrison was the sniper her father believed she could be. The sun began to rise over the mountains. Gold light spilled across the peaks. Another Afghan dawn in a war that measured time in bullets and blood. Sarah closed her eyes, breathed, centered herself. When she opened them again, she was ready. The sun climbed slowly over the Hindu Kush mountains, transforming the Afghan landscape from shadow to brutal clarity. Sarah Morrison had been lying prone behind her Barrett M82 for 6 hours. Her body had become part of the rocky ridge, motionless, patient, the way her father had taught her. 4,087 meters downrange, Ramzan Volkov's compound sat like a fortress carved from the mountain itself. Stone walls, guard towers, elevated firing positions. Through her rifle scope at maximum magnification, Sarah could see Taliban fighters moving through the courtyard, preparing, training, living their lives unaware that death watched from an impossible distance. Jackson Reeves lay beside her, eye pressed to his spotting scope. 60 power magnification. He'd been calling atmospheric conditions every 15 minutes for the past 3 hours, building a data profile, understanding how the air moved between their position and the target. "Wind steady at 12 miles per hour, Jackson said quietly. "Northwest, temperature climbing, 86 degrees now. Barometric pressure holding at 29.2. Sarah made minute adjustments to her scope, calculating. At 4,087 meters, that wind would push her bullet 34 feet to the right. She'd have to aim at a point in empty space, trust physics and mathematics to curve the round back onto target. Her father's voice echoed in memory. "Long-range shooting isn't about the rifle, Sarah Bear. It's about reading the invisible, understanding what the air is doing between you and the target. The rifle just sends the message. The air delivers it." "Contact in 30 minutes, Jackson said. "Intelligence reports Volkov's vehicle just entered the compound. He'll do his security walk at noon. Same pattern as always." Sarah didn't respond, conserving energy. Her mind was already entering the zone, the quiet place where elite snipers lived when preparing for the shot, where heartbeats slowed, where breathing became meditation, where the world narrowed to target, wind, and trigger. She'd loaded 2 rounds into the Barrett's magazine. Both were special, brass casings engraved with her father's initials, T.M. Thomas Morrison. She'd carried these rounds since the day he died, saving them, waiting for the shot that mattered most. Today was that day. "Sarah," Jackson's voice pulled her back from the edge of that quiet place. "Before this goes down, I need to say something." She looked at him, his weathered face, the lines around his eyes. 55 years old, 30 years of service. He'd seen more combat than most people could imagine, survived things that had killed better men, and right now, he looked worried. "Your father made me promise something," Jackson said. "The day before his last deployment, we were having drinks at the NCO club at Camp Pendleton. He knew it was a dangerous assignment. Helmand Province, Taliban sniper activity high. He knew the risks." Sarah felt something tighten in her chest. Her father had never told her about those conversations. The last preparations. The quiet moments before warriors went to war. "He made me promise that if anything happened to him, I'd watch over you. Make sure you didn't let revenge consume you. Make sure you remembered that being a good sniper meant being a good person first." Jackson paused. I failed that promise when you got kicked out of Task Force Paladin. I should have been there, should have helped you through it. You didn't know where I was, Sarah said quietly. Classified assignment. You couldn't have helped even if you'd wanted to. Maybe, but I'm here now, and I need to ask you something, and I need an honest answer. Jackson's eyes were intense, searching. Why are you taking this shot? Is it for the mission? For the 200 people at Kandahar who'll die if Volkov lives? Or is it because he trained the surgeon? Because he's responsible for your father's death? Sarah had been asking herself the same question for the past 7 hours, examining her motivations, testing her resolve, looking for the poison of revenge that had compromised her judgment before. Both, she said finally. Honest. I'd be lying if I said Volkov killing my father doesn't matter. It does. Every time I think about him, I feel rage. Pure. Consuming. The same rage that made me kill the surgeon instead of following orders. But this shot isn't about that rage. It's about preventing future daughters from feeling it. It's about stopping a man who's killed 63 Americans and trained others to kill hundreds more. If my father were here, he'd take this shot. Not for revenge, for the mission, for the people we're sworn to protect. Jackson studied her face, reading truth, reading intent. Finally, he nodded. Good, because at this range, anger will make you miss. You need to be cold, calculated, zen. I know. Sarah returned her eye to the scope. My father taught me that. They fell silent. The sun continued its climb. The temperature rose into the 90s. Heat waves began shimmering off the distant mountains. Sarah watched them through her scope. Mirage patterns. They told her about air density, about thermal currents, about the invisible architecture of atmosphere that her bullet would travel through. At 11:45, movement in the compound. I've got activity, Jackson said. Main building, door opening. Sarah's heart rate increased slightly. Years of training kicked in. 4-count breathing. In through the nose, hold. Out through the mouth, hold. Forcing her autonomic nervous system to calm. A figure emerged from the building. Tall, lean, moving with the economy of a trained operator. Even at 4,000 meters, Sarah could see the confidence, the certainty, the predator's gait. Target acquired, Sarah said. Volkov confirmed by profile match. Jackson zoomed his spotting scope to maximum magnification. Confirmed, that's our guy. Volkov walked across the courtyard, stopped at the guard position, spoke with the fighters there, inspected their weapons, checked their sight lines. Professional, thorough. The muscle memory of Soviet military training still evident after all these years. Sarah calculated the shot in her head. Range, 4,087 meters. Elevation, 427 feet above target. Wind, 12 miles per hour from northwest. Temperature, 92 degrees. Humidity, 38%. The Barrett's ballistic computer provided the data, but Sarah's mind provided the intuition, the feel, the understanding that came from thousands of hours behind a scope. To hit Volkov, she'd need to aim 23 feet above his head and 34 feet to his left. A point in empty air, trusting that gravity, wind, and Earth's rotation would conspire to bring the bullet down onto a human-sized target at a distance most people couldn't comprehend. Volkov continued his patrol, moving toward the compound's northern wall. Sarah tracked him through the scope. Steady, patient. She'd been taught that sniping was 99% waiting and 1% shooting. This was the waiting. Then Volkov did something unexpected. He stopped, pulled out a cigarette, lit it, stood there, smoking, completely still. Wind check, Sarah said. Holding steady, 12 miles per hour, northwest, consistent. This was it. Volkov would stand here for the duration of his cigarette. Maybe 90 seconds, maybe 2 minutes. A stationary target at extreme range. The best opportunity Sarah would get. Her finger moved to the trigger. First pad of her index finger. Proper placement. 4.5 pounds of pressure would break the shot. Then her radio crackled. Colonel Hayes's voice, urgent. Ghost, Atlas TOC, we've got a situation developing. Stand by for update. Sarah's finger froze. Standing by, Hayes's voice carried stress. Bad news coming. We've intercepted Taliban radio traffic. They've got a prisoner, American, Staff Sergeant Dylan Brennan, captured 3 months ago during a patrol in Kajaki district. Sarah felt ice water in her veins. Dylan Brennan, Tyler Brennan's older brother, the soldier who'd been missing in action, presumed dead. Intel indicates Brennan is being held at Volkov's compound, Hayes continued. Taliban is planning to execute him. Today, broadcast the video to damage American morale. Ghost, the prisoner is at your target location. Through her scope, Sarah saw movement. Taliban fighters dragging someone from a building, hands bound, blindfolded. The man was emaciated, bruised. 3 months of captivity written on his body, but he was alive. Jackson swung his spotting scope, found the prisoner. Jesus Christ, that's Brennan. He's 20 feet from Volkov. Sarah's mind raced. The mission parameters had just changed completely. This wasn't just about eliminating a high-value target. This was about saving an American prisoner of war. Hayes's voice came through again. Ghost, understand you have eyes on the prisoner? Situation assessment? Sarah forced herself to think tactically, professionally. Sir, prisoner is in the courtyard, 20 feet northwest of primary target. Taliban fighters preparing execution. Estimate we have 90 seconds before they kill him. Can you take both shots? Eliminate Volkov and create an opportunity to rescue Brennan? Sarah looked at the geometry. Volkov standing still, smoking. Brennan on his knees, blindfolded, 20 feet away. Taliban fighters with weapons surrounding both. At 4,087 meters, she couldn't take 2 separate shots fast enough. The moment the first round impacted, everyone would scatter. Volkov would disappear into the building. Brennan would be executed immediately. But there was another option. Insane. Nearly impossible, but possible. Sir, I have a tactical solution, but it's unconventional. Jackson looked at her, eyes widening as he realized what she was thinking. Explain, Hayes said. Sarah studied the scene through her scope. Brennan was on his knees. His hands were bound behind his back with a steel chain. The chain was secured to a metal stake driven into the ground. Heavy, industrial, the kind of restraint system used for long-term prisoners. Volkov stood 20 feet away, smoking, completely unaware of the precision optic studying him from an impossible distance. The prisoner is restrained with a steel chain, Sarah said. If I can hit the chain where it connects to the stake, the impact should sever it. 50 caliber round hitting hardened steel at that range will fragment, create chaos, give Brennan a chance to escape in the confusion. And Volkov? Hayes asked. Second shot, 3 seconds later, after the chain breaks. While everyone's focused on the explosion in the prisoner, Volkov will turn toward the commotion. That's when I take him. Silence on the radio. Hayes was calculating, weighing the probability of success against the cost of failure. Jackson leaned close, whispered, Sarah, that chain is a 2-inch target at 4,000 meters, in variable wind. If you miss, Brennan dies. If you hit but don't sever the chain, Brennan dies. And Volkov escapes. I know. The ballistic computer says this shot has less than 5% probability of success. I know. Your father would tell you this is suicide, that you can't save everyone, that you should take the mission shot and live with the consequences. Sarah looked at Jackson. My father also taught me that the hardest part of being a sniper isn't making impossible shots. It's choosing which ones to take. I'm choosing this one. Hayes's voice crackled through the radio. Ghost, you're authorized. Both shots. Your discretion on execution. But understand, if this fails, Volkov escapes and Brennan dies. Can you live with that? Sarah thought about Tyler Brennan, the cocky kid who dismissed her in the armory, who'd mocked her capabilities, who'd since apologized, who'd become an ally, who was about to watch his brother die on a video screen unless she did the impossible. Yes, sir, Sarah said. I can live with it because I tried. Execute when ready. May God guide your aim. The radio went silent. Sarah settled deeper into her shooting position. Every muscle in her body relaxed. Her breathing slowed to the rhythm her father had taught her. 4 counts in, 4 counts out. Her heart rate dropped below 50 beats per minute. Jackson called the wind. Still 12 miles per hour, northwest, steady. Through the scope, Sarah watched Taliban fighters position a video camera, preparing to broadcast Dylan Brennan's execution to the world. A propaganda victory, proof that America couldn't protect its soldiers. Volkov took another drag on his cigarette, relaxed, in control, a predator in his domain. Sarah calculated the first shot, the chain, 2 inches wide, 34 feet of wind drift, 23 feet of bullet drop. She'd have to hit a target the size of a coffee cup at 2.5 miles. While accounting for variables that could change in the 6 seconds it took her bullet to arrive, her crosshairs settled on empty air. 23 feet above the chain, 34 feet left. A point in nothing. Pure faith in physics. Range confirmed, 4,087 meters, Jackson said. Wind holding. Temperature 93 degrees. Pressure stable. Sarah's finger touched the trigger. First shot in 10 seconds. She breathed. In, out, in, out. Her body became still as stone. Her mind became clear as glass. This was the place her father had taught her to find. The quiet center where perfect shots lived. 5 seconds. The world narrowed to the reticle. The trigger. The breath. 3 seconds. In her peripheral vision, she saw a Taliban fighter raise a sword above Brennan's neck. The execution was beginning. Shooting. The Barrett roared. Recoil slammed into Sarah's shoulder. The muzzle blast kicked up dust around their hide position. The sound echoed across the mountains like thunder. Sarah stayed on scope, watching. The bullet was already flying, 2,800 feet per second, traveling through air that pushed and pulled at the copper-jacketed projectile. Gravity dragging it down in a precise mathematical arc. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Sarah was already cycling the bolt, ejecting the spent brass, her father's initials tumbling through Afghan sunlight, chambering the second round, the last one with his initials. 4 seconds, 5 seconds. Through the scope, she saw the impact. The .50 caliber round hit the chain exactly where it connected to the stake. The chain exploded. Fragments of hardened steel and bullet jackets sprayed outward at lethal velocity. The stake shattered. Brennan lurched forward, suddenly free. The courtyard erupted in chaos. Taliban fighters spinning, shouting, confusion rippling through their formation. Volkov turned toward the commotion, dropping his cigarette, reaching for the pistol at his belt. Sarah's crosshairs were already on him, tracking, leading, accounting for his movement. 6 seconds. She fired. The second shot, the last round with her father's initials, leaving the barrel at 2,800 feet per second, beginning its own impossible journey across 2.5 miles of hostile air. 1 second. Dylan Brennan was running, hands still bound, blindfold slipping, running toward the compound wall. 2 seconds. Taliban fighters opening fire, shooting at Brennan, bullets kicking up dirt around his feet. 3 seconds. Volkov bringing his pistol up, aiming at Brennan, a final kill before escape. 4 seconds. Sarah held her breath, watched, prayed. 5 seconds. 6 seconds. The bullet arrived. Through the scope, Sarah saw Ramzan Volkov's chest explode. The .50 caliber round impacted just left of his sternum. Center mass. The kind of shot that left no room for survival. Volkov's body lifted off the ground, flew backwards 6 feet, landed in a spreading pool of crimson, dead before he hit the ground. "Target down," Jackson said. His voice carried awe. "Both shots, both hits. Sarah, you just made 2 successful shots at 4,000 meters. That's impossible." Through the scope, Sarah watched Dylan Brennan reach the compound wall. A Taliban fighter grabbed him. Brennan, hands still bound, headbutted the fighter, broke free, climbed the wall with the desperate strength of a man who'd survived 3 months of hell and wasn't going back. "Atlas, Ghost," Sarah transmitted. "Primary target eliminated. Prisoner is escaping the compound. Northeast wall. Request immediate QRF for recovery." Hayes's voice came back instantly. "QRF, launching now. Helicopter 2 minutes out. Ghost, I don't know how you made those shots, but you just saved that man's life and eliminated our highest priority target. Outstanding work." Sarah didn't respond. She was watching through the scope. Watching Dylan Brennan run across open ground. Taliban fighters in pursuit. Shooting. Missing in their panic and confusion. Then, the beautiful sound of American helicopters. 2 Apache gunships screaming over the ridgeline, their 30-millimeter cannons opening fire. Taliban fighters evaporating in clouds of red mist and shattered earth. A Black Hawk descended, fast rope deploying, Marines sliding down, securing Brennan, covering fire, professional extraction. 60 seconds later, the Black Hawk lifted off with Brennan aboard. The Apaches provided cover. Rockets streaking into the compound, destroying buildings, eliminating threats. Justice delivered at supersonic speed. Sarah sat back from the Barrett, her hands were shaking. First time in years, the adrenaline finally catching up. The magnitude of what she'd just done settling into her bones. Jackson put a hand on her shoulder. "You did it. Both shots. 4,087 meters. That's the longest confirmed combat kill in military history, and you did it twice, in 6 seconds. Sarah looked at the spent brass beside her. 2 casings, her father's initials catching the Afghan sun. TM. She picked them up, held them carefully. These would go in a special place when she got home, right next to his photograph. "My father always said the best shots are the ones that save lives. Not just take them," Sarah said quietly. "Today I saved one, and stopped hundreds from being taken at Kandahar." They packed their equipment, beginning the long patrol back to Forward Operating Point Eagle. The Marines there would provide security for the return to FOB Atlas. As they moved down from the ridge, Sarah allowed herself one look back. The compound was burning now. Apache rockets had done their work. Volkov's training facility, his safe haven, his legacy of death, all burning. Her father's killer was dead. The man who trained him was dead. The program that had killed hundreds of Americans was ended. It should have felt like victory, like completion. Instead, Sarah just felt tired. The patrol back took 9 hours. They moved carefully. Taliban forces in the area would be angry, looking for revenge, looking for the sniper who'd reached out across impossible distance and killed their leader. But Sarah and Jackson were ghosts. They moved through the terrain without trace, without sound. By the time Taliban fighters reached the ridge where they'd shot from, the only evidence would be 2 spent brass casings, a calling card from an invisible warrior. They reached Forward Operating Point Eagle at 2100 hours. The Marine lieutenant met them with hot coffee and news. "Dylan Brennan's in surgery at Kandahar," the lieutenant said. "Doctors say he'll make it. Malnourished, dehydrated, some broken bones that healed wrong, but he'll live. His brother's on a helicopter right now, going to see him." Sarah felt something warm in her chest. Tyler Brennan would see his brother alive, would get to tell him he'd been forgiven, would get another chance. Not everyone got that. They helicoptered back to FOB Atlas at midnight. Sarah expected to go straight to debriefing. Instead, as she stepped off the Black Hawk, She saw the entire base personnel in formation. Hundreds of soldiers, Marines, sailors, airmen, standing at attention. Colonel Hayes stood at the front. As Sarah approached, he called out, "Attention to orders!" The entire base snapped to attention. Hayes stepped forward. "Staff Sergeant Sarah Morrison, today you conducted a precision strike operation at a range of 4,087 meters. You engaged and eliminated a high-value target responsible for 63 American deaths. You simultaneously rescued a prisoner of war under active threat of execution. You prevented a planned attack on Kandahar airfield that would have killed an estimated 200 coalition personnel." He paused. Let the weight of those words settle. Your shots today represent the longest confirmed combat kills in military history. Your actions represent the highest ideals of American service. You are a credit to your uniform, your branch, and your nation. The base erupted in applause. Cheering. Sarah stood there overwhelmed. She'd expected classification, secrecy, the same sanitized record that had buried her previous achievements. Instead, she was getting recognition, public acknowledgement. Her father would have been so proud. Tyler Brennan pushed through the crowd, tears streaming down his face. "You saved my brother. After everything I said to you, after I doubted you, you saved him anyway." Sarah didn't know what to say, so she just nodded. Tyler wiped his eyes. "I'm putting in for a transfer. To your unit. I want to be your spotter. Want to learn from the best. If you'll have me." Sarah looked at Jackson. He smiled, nodded. Approval in his weathered face. "You'll have to earn it," Sarah said to Tyler. "Being a spotter isn't about ego. It's about service, about making the shooter better. Can you do that?" "Yes, ma'am," Tyler said. "I can. I will." The debriefing lasted 3 hours. Sarah walked Hayes and the intelligence officers through every detail. The calculations, the win calls, the decision to take both shots, the impossible geometry that had made it work. When it was done, Hayes pulled her aside privately. "The CIA is furious," he said. "They wanted Volkov alive. They're already complaining up the chain of command, saying you disobeyed the preference for capture." Sarah felt the old fear rising, the same fear from when she'd killed the surgeon. Would she be punished again? Kicked out again? Her record sanitized again? Hayes must have seen it in her face. He smiled. "Relax, Staff Sergeant. I told them that battlefield conditions required lethal force, that attempting to wound at 4,000 meters would have compromised the prisoner rescue and the overall mission. They're not happy, but they can't argue with results. 200 people are alive at Kandahar because of your decision. So my record will remain classified for approximately 20 years. Standard protocol for sensitive operations. After that, it'll be declassified. Your name will enter the history books. The female soldier who made the longest combat shot in history, who saved American lives through impossible marksmanship." Sarah thought about that. 20 years. Should be 47. Maybe retired. Maybe teaching. Maybe telling this story to students who wouldn't quite believe it. "I can live with that," she said. "There's one more thing," Hayes said. "I've been authorized to offer you a position. Training assignment. Advanced Scout Sniper School. You'd be an instructor, teaching the next generation of long-range shooters, passing on your father's legacy. Interested?" Sarah thought about it. No more combat deployments. No more impossible shots. No more lying on mountains waiting to kill people at distances they couldn't imagine. Instead, teaching, mentoring, creating new generations of precision shooters who would protect Americans the way she had. Her father had been an instructor, had taught hundreds of Marines, had shaped careers and saved lives through the knowledge he'd shared. Maybe it was time for Sarah to do the same. "Yes, sir," she said. "I'm very interested." The transfer paperwork had come through 4 weeks after Dylan's rescue. Tyler Brennan reported to Sarah's unit with none of his former swagger, just quiet determination. "I want to learn," he'd said simply. "Teach me to be the spotter you deserve." Sarah had worked him harder than any student she'd ever had. 18-hour days studying ballistics, night operations in freezing rain, psychological stress tests that would break most soldiers. Tyler absorbed it all, transformed himself from an infantry corporal into a precision operator. They deployed together twice more before Sarah accepted the instructor position. On their final mission, Tyler had spotted a 2,800-meter shot that saved a pinned reconnaissance team. As they extracted, he'd turned to Sarah with tears in his eyes. "Dylan's getting married next month. He asked me to be his best man." Tyler's voice broke. "I get to stand there because you made an impossible choice. Thank you doesn't cover it, but thank you." Sarah had understood then. The longest shot wasn't the one at 4,087 meters. It was choosing to save Dylan when mission doctrine said to prioritize Volkov. That choice had rippled outward, saved a marriage that hadn't happened yet, future children who would grow up with their father, a family made whole. That was the shot that mattered most. 6 months later, Staff Sergeant Sarah Morrison stood in front of her first class at Advanced Scout Sniper School. 35 students, including 9 women, all looking at her with a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. She was young for an instructor, only 28, but her reputation had preceded her. Whispers about impossible shots, classified operations, records that couldn't be discussed. "My name is Staff Sergeant Morrison," she said. "Some of you have heard stories about me. Some of those stories are true. Most are exaggerated. But here's what you need to know. I'm here to teach you how to become precision shooters, how to make difficult shots in combat conditions, how to save American lives through marksmanship." She paused, made eye contact with each student. "But more importantly, I'm here to teach you something my father taught me, that being a good sniper isn't about the shots you take. It's about the shots you choose not to take. It's about judgment, about restraint, about understanding that every trigger pull has consequences that ripple far beyond the target." A hand went up. One of the female students, young, maybe 22, reminded Sarah of herself at that age. "Instructor Morrison, is it true you made a 4,000-meter shot?" Sarah smiled. "That's classified, but I'll tell you this. If you master the fundamentals I'm going to teach you, if you practice until the rifle becomes an extension of yourself, if you learn to read wind and atmosphere like your native language, then there's no such thing as an impossible shot. There are only improbable ones. And with enough skill and enough faith, you can make the improbable routine." She walked to the rifle rack, pulled out a Barrett M82, the same model she'd used in Afghanistan, the same weapon that had reached across impossible distances and delivered American justice. "This rifle will become your closest companion. You'll learn every component, every function, every limitation. You'll practice until you can field strip it blindfolded, until you can calculate ballistics faster than a computer, until you can make a shot at 1,000 meters with the same confidence you'd have at 100. Sarah set the Barrett on the demonstration table. Let the students see it, touch it, feel the weight of the weapon and the responsibility it represented. "My father used to say that rifles don't kill people, bullets don't kill people, bad decisions kill people. As snipers, you'll make life and death decisions from distances where the enemy can't see you, can't fight back, can't defend themselves. That power comes with responsibility. Use it wisely. Use it honorably. Use it the way Americans expect their warriors to use it." Over the next 3 years, Sarah trained 216 students, watched them graduate, watched them deploy, watched some of them die in service to their country. But she also watched them save lives, watched them make impossible shots that protected American forces. Watch them become the precision instruments her father had taught her to be. Tyler Brennan became her best spotter, worked with her for 2 years before deploying as a sniper himself. He credited Sarah with saving not just his brother's life, but his own soul, teaching him that redemption came through service, not through ego. Jackson Reeves retired at 58, 3 decades of service complete. He recommended Sarah as his replacement for advanced training operations. The recommendation was approved. At age 30, Sarah Morrison became the youngest master instructor in Scout Sniper School history. At age 32, she was promoted to Sergeant First Class. At age 35, she retired from active duty with 63 confirmed kills across 4 deployments. But she never spoke about the numbers. When journalists tried to interview her about the 4,000-meter shot, she declined. "That shot wasn't about me," she'd say. "It was about the mission, about the Americans I was trying to protect. Making it about me dishonors their sacrifice." Instead, Sarah founded a civilian marksmanship training program, teaching veterans, teaching law enforcement, teaching responsible citizens how to shoot with precision and discipline. She also worked with TAPS, the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, helping families of fallen soldiers, sharing her story of loss and redemption, showing them that grief could be transformed into purpose. On the 10th anniversary of her father's death, Sarah visited Arlington National Cemetery. She placed flowers on Gunnery Sergeant Tom Morrison's grave, stood there in silence, remembering. A shadow fell across the headstone. Sarah looked up to see an older woman, white hair, kind eyes, wearing a Gold Star mother's pin, the symbol of women who'd lost children in military service. "Are you Sarah Morrison?" the woman asked. "Yes, ma'am. My son was at Kandahar Airfield, August 17th, 2011. The day they say an attack was prevented. The day someone killed a terrorist leader from over 2 miles away." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "My son is alive because of that shot. He came home, got married, gave me grandchildren, all because someone I'll never meet did something impossible to protect him." Sarah felt her own tears building. "Ma'am, I know it was you," the woman said gently. "I've done my research, talked to people, put pieces together. I know your record is classified. I know you can't confirm it, but I needed to thank you, to tell you that my son's life mattered, that your shot mattered, that you gave our family a future we wouldn't have had otherwise." She hugged Sarah, tight, the embrace of a mother grateful beyond words. When she left, Sarah knelt by her father's grave, placed her hand on the cold marble. "I kept my promise, Dad," she whispered. "I became the sniper you trained me to be, not for revenge, not for glory, but to protect the people who couldn't protect themselves. I hope I made you proud." The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of summer grass and distant rain. Sarah imagined it was her father's voice, telling her what she already knew in her heart. He was proud. He'd always been proud, not because of the shots she'd made, but because of the person she'd become. A warrior who understood that the hardest part of being a sniper wasn't making impossible shots. It was choosing which ones to take, and living with the consequences of both the shots taken and the shots withheld. Sarah Morrison stood, straightened her shoulders, walked away from the grave toward the parking lot, toward her car, toward the rest of her life. Behind her, the inscription on her father's headstone caught the afternoon sun. Gunnery Sergeant Thomas Morrison. He taught others to aim higher. And his daughter had proven that the best way to honor a teacher's legacy wasn't through revenge or records. It was through passing the lessons forward, through teaching others, through transforming pain into purpose, through becoming the person her father had always believed she could be. A ghost who protected the living, a warrior who chose justice over vengeance, a sniper who understood that the longest shot wasn't measured in meters. It was measured in lives saved, in futures protected, in legacies honored. And by that measure, Sarah Morrison's shot would echo through generations. Invisible, impossible, immortal, just like her father taught her.